the kind of content offered to us is so thought-provoking, and so you did a marvelous job, and every one of us, I think, was excited, full of questions, which I hope we will pursue in the days that follow. Let me start by quoting Alexander the Great. Now, he's generally associated with rape and rapine and, conquest, and the young boy who became, who became the emperor of the world because he was able to ride a horse by realizing the trick that the horse was afraid of its own shadow. So big it was. So it is the shadows of the mind that we've been talking about. The shadows of the mind that provoke us to demonize or to demonize the other, and sometimes forget our own innate humanity in the process. Now, what did Alexander the Great say? Whatever possession we gain by our sword cannot be sure or everlasting, but the love gained by kindness and moderation is certain and durable. Now, I think Dr. Saab will agree with me that this four-letter word, L-O-V-E, it has been sung about by prophets and poets, and we feel it, and it wanes and rises and all that. But as a science editor, I would say this is the most important word, and this is one of the hallmarks of humanity, really. And the other hallmark of humanity that we spoke about was empathy. And being able to put yourself in the shoes of the other. This is also the mother of creativity, because you are able to think of situations that don't exist or that ought to exist. And I would say, I would humbly submit that this 9th conference devoted to peace and reconciliation is one such exercise, where we are talking about a virtual utopia, where there is no conflict. Of course, we are not so daft to think that you can have peace that is everlasting. Indraji, spoke about the absence of absolutes, that you cannot have something that lasts forever. It would be boring again. When Zeus was requested by his daughter, when she fell in love with a human, to make him immortal, he said, "Are you sure?" She, of course, besotted as she was, says, "Yes, sire." And he makes that man immortal. What she forgot to ask was, let his youth and charm and brains be also the same. She was immortal, and she was ageless, and he, of course, within 3 or 4 decades, gets on to repeating himself, not remembering what he just said, and he becomes such a nuisance that she goes running back to her father. She says, "Rid me of this." So, we must be also careful of what we ask for. Imagine a world for a moment without conflict. Have we dared to do that? Have you seen Thomas More and others? We have so many people talking about utopias. They are very beautiful to conjure up, but the difficult part is to maintain them and to make sure that they exist. And that is, I think, the real task that Swamiji is being enabling us by these beautiful sangoshtis, where we are putting our thoughts, contentious they might be sometimes, but now look at what Sir talked about. I have so many bones to pick up with that narrative, starting with Karna. Let me just give you an example. When I was 19 years old, there came a bestseller, viral bestseller, in the days before internet, called Mrityunjaya. It was written by a school peon, It is a novel on Karna's life, unparalleled in Marathi. He went, 7 years he took of research. He went to all the places. He was a school peon, Shivaji Samant. And he had taken a low profile job because he didn't want his creativity to be dispersed and he produced this masterpiece. The only problem with that is that Arjuna gets about 3 paragraphs. And even at that age, I was not the happy-go-lucky, follow the rules child, teen. And I began a novel called Savyasachin, which was to be a retort to Shivaji Savant's classic. It is one of the great classics of 20th century Marathi literature. Now, what was the point that I zeroed in on? Karna's treatment of Draupadi. There is an industry today to romanticize this villain. He is the root of evil actually in Mahabharata. It is but for Karna, Duryodhana would not have dared to start the war. It is only because of Karna that all this happens. And the order for disrobing, dragging her, comes from Karna. There are reasons why this happened. I'm not arguing, I'm not demonizing him. But what distinguishes Arjuna are 3 stories, which are seldom thought of. First is when Urvashi proposes to him. What does he say? We cannot break our rules. You are our grandmother. You are the root from which we have sprung. At the cost of being emasculated, he stands his ground. Now, does any one of the heroes of the Mahabharata have the 4-letter words to do that? But look at the subtlety of Vyasa in giving this story to us. Arjuna's name is Bruhannala. You know what really Bruhannala means? The big channel or the big reed, literally. He did not lose his manhood. In fact, he was Superman, even in that political well-hung department. And so blind were the Kauravas, the Dhritarashtra that you correctly cauterized for his greed, that they were unable to see the man when they even saw the big reed. So Bruhannala is Vyasa's grin, impish grin at us stupid people. And Bruhannala's message again to Uttara. Now that is another story. The second story in which, when he comes back to the Virata Sabha, what is feckless Virata's action? Oh, let's appease him by giving him my daughter. And what is Arjuna's response? Look at the beautiful response. He says, she has been my beautiful child and a pupil. If I accept your offer, Guru Shishya Parampara will be ruined forever. She is pure and beautiful enough to be my granddaughter and the mother of my Vamsha. And this is really the reason Arjuna was actually greater than Krishna pre-Mahabharata, pre-Panini. If you see the Panini Sutras, Arjuna was a god along with Krishna. Of course, there has been recensions and, Vaishnava cults and rise of bhakti and all kinds of things. And the third thing, he is the only great warrior who has the humanity to see the carnage before it has happened. And Siddhanti Mama Gatrani is not, he is crying at what the widows are going to do. The 5-7 people on the water, he has seen it, and the Lord gives him the action for mantra that Madhuvanti ji spoke about. That is inevitable action. But it has a price. He was never happy. Now, the crowning glory is that when they are going, on Himalaya, when he loses, Yudhishthira, the poor sod, I say, he is unfit to be a, Maharaja. He is asked, why has this great hero died? He says, Draupadi favored him. When Draupadi dies, he says that. Why is he died? Because he said, in one day he will take off all my enemies. And he didn't fulfill. But what were you doing in that? Playing dice. Rolling dice. That is the lesson to be learned. That you do not agree to your mothers. But then what happens? You get Kalaha. She was very wise, and she said that if there is this Triratna, and you know why was Draupadi inimical to Karna? Not because of caste. Very few people have realized that she was conceived for Arjuna alone. You know the story. Drupada was a Guru Bandhu of Dronacharya, and then they have a pact, because when your bum chumps like that, he says, when I become king, I'll give you half my kingdom. When he becomes king, Drona goes, he's a poor Brahmin by then, although armed to the teeth by Parshurama. He says, give me that kingdom. He says, who are you? So when the princes have finished their martial training, he says, now go and get me this guy. Very few people forget that Karna, along with Duryodhana's entire army, was unable to dent even one wing of Drupada. And they came beaten, black and blue. It is Arjuna and Bhima alone. They are able to get him, but while taking him to Drupada, the behavior of Arjuna is so courtly and so beautiful that he says, if I have a son-in-law, it has to be this. And he doesn't have kids. So he makes a Mahayajna to Shiva, who creates Yajnaseni only for Partha. And that is not all Parthas, just for this Sabyasachi. And it is another story that the other Pandavas were brought in. Drushtadumna was also created specifically for destruction of Drona. Now, again, the crowning glory of Arjuna you see at Mahabalipuram. He is the only hero among the, who can wield the Pashupata and who has dared to fight the Lord. And you see the behavior of every other hero. At some point, they have run away. When Arjuna is beaten black and blue and made into dust, what he does, with his mouth, he gathers dust and creates a lingam, and with his tears of rage, he does Abhishekam. And he finds, to his astonishment, that the flowers that he has dragged with his mouth, because he is unable to move, they go to the Kirata's head. This is Bharavi's masterpiece, This is the climax in Kirata Arjuneya. Now, it is for writers and poets and good rulers. It was to emphasize the right role models. It is when we now there is the industry even talking about Duryodhana's justification. When somebody is, plotting to kill your cousins with poison through laddus, I mean, how can he be a good king? You see the repetition of that in the Mughal times again. You see the fate, that awaited Darashikoh. And Darashikoh was so beautiful physically that the Himachali kings had him visit their harems because the ladies could see him. Otherwise, they were restricted from going out. But we were told how his head was, Makaran spoke about it. And bestial treatment was there. Now, these are actually cautionary tales for us, and I'm only digressing from my, these were not part of my thing. Now, why Alexander? When we went to Turkey, I went to a place called Ephesus. How much time do I have? Oh, okay. So there we went to there is a place where the world's seventh wonder in the ancient world was standing, and that was the temple to the goddess. Nisha was making fun of me that, in front of Swamiji, that I've been concentrating too much on the goddesses. But Swamiji had commanded me in our last encounter that we must look at martial goddesses. And what do these, when we empower goddesses, let us not look at martial goddesses, including Tulsa Bhavani, including Mahalakshmi of Kolhapur, including Tulzo of the royal family of Nepal, and the martial goddesses in Gujarat, coastal, Mukambika, So, as part of that, I had gone to Turkey. We went to this ancient site where there was only one single fabulous pillar. All the rest of the pillars have disappeared. We were only 3 of us on this vast meadow. That is where Alexander the Great came to pray to the goddess. And now the great line that I got there was, this is the temple of Magna Mater, the Great Mother. She was also called, the Turkish guide told me, who just came up from, he was one of the priests, Patniya Theron. Patni. It is from the Sanskrit that they have given her this name. And she is also our mistress, Lady Hunter, or the goddess Artemis. Now in the museum we will have the statues of Artemis, but they will have a cross cut on them, because the later faith. Now the pillars of the goddess temple went to Hagia Sophia when it was a church. Then it got converted into a. Then comes Kamal, and then he makes it into a museum. Now it's again got converted into a mosque. See, I'm not being critical of all this, because this is the inexorable change that you're going to see. And Shannon also spoke about the change from Bangabandhu's ideology to a military industrial complex kind of mindset, swing back again and all that. In all this, the ants should not get crushed when elephants fight. These are big fights. These are global fights. You talked about strategic patience. The ant has no patience. It is the elephant which has long memories and long hatreds and long fights also. It is from that we need to insulate the world, actually. Because they can even run away to their havens with all their unaccounted wealth, It is the hoi polloi that will bear the brunt of this. Now, why did I bring this goddess from Turkey? I wanted to share just 2 brief serendipities that happened when Swamiji spoke to me. When he called me without much formality, what was my first response? How are you? What are you doing? I said, I'm in your seva. So he says, can you give me a little speech? I said, done. So why do I say? Yeah. So why? Because, one of my alma maters, one of them, which is the Salzburg seminar based in Austria, had also invited me to Salzburg for a peace seminar. That was just a few weeks earlier. So what I did is that I have not had the time to get a fresh visa on my new passport. So I said, I will send you my talk. So I thought a great deal about the subject that Swamiji spoke about. And at that seminar, the Jewish Museum in Vienna was a co-partner. And it was called A Global Perspective on Peace in Times of Conflict. This had 4 areas of focus. First was peace and justice, as Swamiji chose. It would examine the rule of law, politics, and diplomacy. This was where I had done more of the work for the seminar. Second was peace and culture. That meant examination of politics, art, and social movements. This is where I took a pot shot, pardon me, just to liven up the debate a bit. Third was on peace and discourse, which would attend to memory, anti-Semitism and racism, which is relevant to us also deeply, you would agree. And the final was on the peace and women, elaborated as centering women and feminism as a core principle of peace and peace building. This also I feel, and this is the reason why I was very enthused by Swamiji's Nyota on working on looking at the various aspects of the feminine, including the protective and martial ones. I won't say violent. That would be not a. Now, the second serendipity was a book that I am working on called Icons of Peace, where many people have not understood why Hinduism has been able to withstand everything. It has been able to do so because it has acquired the core, supposedly acquired the core concept of ahimsa from so-called heretical movements like Jainism and Buddhism. I don't agree with that proposition, but how have they internalized this? They have done it to a measure that the beautiful Tambrams and Kerala Mallu friends of mine don't realize. We have been told that the Panchamahayajnas are completely essential for a Grihastha. Why are they essential? Because unconsciously we kill things in the kitchen. Like when we walk, we kill, and the Jains do sweeping of the. When we pestle, when we winnow, when we fill water, these are called panchasunas. And these panchasunas, to expiate the sin, you do the Panchamahayajnas. But what are the Panchamahayajnas? They are charity, community building, sharing of knowledge, remembering of ancestry and traditions, and remembering the vast divine, without which you are not alive. And whether you are believing in Charvakas, whether you are believing in Mimamsa, whether in yoga, whatever it is, life is the greatest wonder on this planet. And when you bring this back, how can that faith be defeated? You know, this is what I say. The peace is hardwired into our rituals, except that we have lost sight of many of these. Now, there is a discourse to be. I'm going to conclude very soon, so don't worry that this is going to go on till midnight or whatever. Of course, you won't allow me. There will be a lot of peace and justice issue involved. Yeah. No, the story is that the Upanishads and the texts are male-centric. Gargi is being admonished and people are not getting prominence, etc., etc. The best example, you want to find a contradiction to it and a sub-story, which I have to narrate to you, is the Kenopanishad. Where does this all come from? Kenopanishad, Keno. So, see, this is a culture based on curiosity, which is why these beautiful minds are the richest in America. Why do you think you are able to handle software? Why were you in IIT in the first place? Or why were you doing that stereochemical twisting of proteins? Because you come from a culture that encourages questioning. For questioning, you have to give freedom. You have to give freedom not just to one gender. You have to give freedom to the other gender. That is the great lesson of Kenopanishad. When the Devas and the Asuras fight, and because of Brahman's force, Asuras lose, the Devas become proud, like they are always want to be, and then they start thinking that, oh, it is because of us. So to teach them the lesson of life comes the Brahman in the form of a Vilakshana Yaksha, which they have never seen. So he says, what is this? What is this? So they send emissaries First goes Agni. He says, who are you? Agni, but who are you? So Agni says, I am the guy who, I can burn anything. So he says, okay, take this little straw, burn it. Ille, he is not able to burn anything, forget his own mustache, And then he goes back, beaten. Vayu comes next. Vayu says, oh, I am the great Zephyr which can move mountains. He says, okay, take this. Same thing happens. Vayu is also beaten. Last comes Indra. Indra is wise because he says, if these two powerful elements have not been able to, how can I do this? So, at that time, he sees Uma Haimavati, beautiful daughter of the mountain, laden with beautiful ornaments. And she tells him, not the that it is Brahman itself, because of whom you have won. And she is the most supreme goddess, who is superior to all the male gods. And they are not, only 3 gods in the Vedic pantheon among the 33 became worthy of the first Havi because of their proximity to Brahman. But imagine the power of Uma Haimavati, who knows the nature of Brahman before these people have even got to the perimeter. Now, when this story was borrowed by Victor Hugo in the 19th century, and he wrote a beautiful poem in French, completely obliterating Uma Haimavati from his account of the Kenopanishad. Now, that is the difference between the Western discourse and, dare I say, the native discourse. I know it's a term fraught with all kinds of baggage. We need to recover this, not in a spirit of combat, because there's much to learn from everybody. And their tradition, as we have seen from so many beautiful faiths here gathered by the benediction of Swamiji, there's much to learn and celebrate and to recreate for a challenging world, which, and may I say, not only as a mother, even as a father, I am worried about, So I have one princess in Stanford, and even at the age of 36, I continue to call her child. And now, as a tail end story, when Dhirubhai Ambani gave 1 crore to his son's Udicity, he called my wife and me among 18 other couples for the ceremony to his house. We got to sit next to him. Now, that is the time I didn't waste in asking what will be the script tomorrow, because I used to be an Economic Times editor also. Instead, I asked him, a child who has been raised like a little doll is going for the first time to this great Uncle Sam's land, and what would be your advice? First, he said, I am matriculate. You are postdoctorate. I said, Dhirubhai, it's for my daughter. Immediately he changed, became like a lion. And he says, Sunega, tell your child there are no problems in this world, only opportunities. If you live life like this, then you. Now, if you want to make a big enterprise, have the brains to surround yourself with people smarter than yourself. And the third and final advice says, be wise enough to be aware of your own BS. I don't want to say, I am aware of my own BS, so I have other things to offer, and we will talk later about it. Thank you for listening to me so patiently. God bless.